Hello everyone. Welcome to Conscious Wisdom. Every day, we dedicate ourselves to accompanying elderly individuals. As we move through life, we all face an inevitable challenge, aging. While aging is a serious topic, it's something we all must deal with. Social norms suggest that we should address and prevent the effects of aging, but with the increasing daily demands and fast-paced life of today's youth, many prefer a more independent lifestyle, and few choose to live with their parents. Additionally, due to differences in thinking and lifestyles between the two generations, living together for an extended period can lead to numerous conflicts and misunderstandings. This is why more and more elderly individuals have stopped expecting to be cared for in their old age. Nowadays, it is quite common to hire a caregiver or move to a nursing home. However, not everyone can afford this type of assistance. The cost of hiring a caregiver is at least 5,000 or 6,000 yuan, often exceeding 10,000. Many retirees only receive between 2,000 and 3,000 yuan monthly. Furthermore, services in low-cost nursing homes are often inadequate, while the more expensive options do not offer much difference compared to hiring a caregiver. The concerning reality is that there are always some elderly individuals who find solutions on their own to face this situation. One way of care in old age adapts to individual circumstances. As the saying goes, there are always more solutions than problems. Wisdom is found among people. Today we will share 3 approaches to elder care adopted by elderly individuals that are suitable for most seniors with modest resources. They do not depend on caregivers or nursing homes, and the best part is that it's a comfortable and low-cost option, which is worth considering. Now, let's listen to the stories of these 3 elderly individuals. 1. The experience of Grandpa Su, 75 years old. I have experienced both living in a nursing home and hiring a caregiver. Both are expensive and not always appropriate, especially for those of us who do not have very high pensions. This year I turned 75, and my wife passed away over 5 years ago. Shortly after her death, I hired a caregiver, but I fired her after 2 months. Since I was young, I was never good at cooking, so my children were worried that I wasn't eating well, and they decided to cover the cost of a caregiver. We agreed that the expense would be 5,500 yuan a month, including food and accommodation. The caregiver was about 40 years old, came from a rural area, and seemed quite honest, but the food she prepared was terrible. Moreover, she spent most of her time on her phone or watching television. Sometimes I would call her several times, and she wouldn't even listen to me. In the end, I decided to fire her. She didn't act like a caregiver, rather, it felt like I was taking care of her. Paying more than 5,000 a month to have someone in the house who only spent her time on her phone and whose food was inedible wasn't worth it. I thought that money would be better spent on buying my own food, so I decided to forego her services. Then, my children found me a place in a nursing home, but I didn't want to go. They insisted because they were worried about me living alone. Nowadays, nursing homes are quite nice, but the staff is not always suitable, and they have very strict management. You have to register every time you enter or leave. I highly value my freedom and cannot stand that kind of control. Furthermore, in those places, there are always elderly people who pass away, and that environment is very depressing. I didn't stay even a month in the nursing home before deciding to leave. From my point of view, as long as a person can take care of themselves, they shouldn't consider going to a nursing home, especially if they value their independence. Later, my children suggested that I could stay with each of them in turns. Although they do it with the intention of caring for me, I feel a bit overwhelmed. I stayed with them for a while, but never more than 2 weeks. I'll start by talking about my son's house. Both he and his wife work during the day and are rarely home. When I arrived, my daughter-in-law always prepared lunch and left it in the fridge before leaving for work. They were already quite busy, and when they got home, they had to take care of household chores. I always felt like a burden to them, which made me uncomfortable. During the day, I spent most of the time alone in the house, and I didn't know most of the neighbors well, so I didn't feel as comfortable as in my own home. Although my son and daughter-in-law treated me with respect, I also noticed that as I grow older, young people sometimes show a certain disdain towards me. For example, at my son's house, the utensils I used were specially designated for me, different from the ones they used. Similarly, at my daughter-in-law's house, she doesn't allow me to put my clothes in the washing machine because she is bothered by the smell of old people. I prefer washing by hand, but she doesn't accept that. I have to go to the laundromat or go down to the first floor to wash my clothes, which is uncomfortable for me. In the end, it's like being at home, but nowhere at all. Regarding my daughter's house, I never intended for her to take care of me in my old age. Although every time I go, both she and her husband treat me very kindly, I know that my son-in-law also has his own parents. Over the years, the maternal grandparents have helped raise the children, and when they got married, it was my daughter's family that bought the house and the car. As one ages, it is essential to be aware of one's situation. So, in the years that have passed since my wife's passing, I have gradually come to understand a truth: as I age, it is essential to rely on oneself. As long as I can take care of myself, I don't need to go anywhere. There's no place like my own home. Now I have learned to cook, sauté, and even steam buns, and I have also started practicing Tai Chi. In the mornings, I meet with a group of elderly people in the square to exercise. Prioritizing my health and maintaining a positive attitude is the most important thing for me. Last year, along with other lonely elderly people with whom I practice Tai Chi, we created a new form of self-care that consists of helping each other. We live together and provide support for one another. In our Tai Chi group, there are more than 10 people, 8 of whom, like me, are elderly individuals without partners or children nearby. Later, we joined a WeChat group for lonely elderly people. Since last year, the group has grown to nearly 20 members. What is the purpose of this group? When one ages and doesn't have family nearby, if they feel unwell or experience any pain, it is really essential to have someone to turn to. Many elderly people in our situation prefer not to go to nursing homes or consider hiring a caregiver, plus they don't have a very high pension. That's why we have come together to take care of each other at this stage of life. In recent years, numerous cases have been documented online of elderly individuals living alone and passing away in their homes, only to be found days later. For this reason, we decided to create this group to stay connected and ensure that everyone is okay. Every morning, we check in with the group. If someone doesn't respond, we go check on them. We all live nearby, either in the same neighborhood or in adjacent ones. Over time, the group has transformed into a space where we can share any situation. For example, if someone falls ill and needs someone to prepare soup for them or accompany them to the hospital, it won't be free, we compensate the work at a rate of 30 yuan per hour. If I feel unwell today and need to go to the hospital, I simply let the group know, and whoever is free will come to accompany me. For example, the last time, Grandpa Lee assisted me at the hospital and helped me with the consultations. That was for 3 days, working 8 hours each day, totaling 24 hours, so I paid him 720 yuan, as agreed. Everyone likes this system. Not only do we have someone to assist us, but we can also earn an income. Sometimes you take care of me, and I compensate you, and other times I take care of you, and you pay me. It's fair and balanced. Moreover, everyone in the group faces similar situations and understands each other. This method is very well received by us seniors, and it is more affordable than hiring an assistant or residing in an elderly care center. The most important thing is that we all know each other and trust one another. Thanks to this group, the children feel more relaxed. Occasionally, we organize outings together, stroll through the park, and it is truly very enjoyable. Our way of caring for the elderly has evolved from being a small group to now dozens of people, and many seniors have decided to join. This not only reduces the burden on the children but also offers us emotional support. Every day, there is someone who cares about us, talks to us, and accompanies us. If we fall ill, we are not afraid of being alone. In the end, it only costs a few hundred yuan, which is much more affordable than hiring a caregiver or living in a nursing home. I think this option is suitable for most elderly people who can take care of themselves. Together, we unite to take care of each other in old age, helping one another, and we can also earn money. Before moving on, remember to like the video if you are enjoying it, and subscribe to the channel for the best tips on how to attract abundance and prosperity into your life. Let's move on. 2. That I am grandpa-ly, I am 65 years old. My children are quite educated, but I do not wish to live with them, as I have chosen a lifestyle that suits my needs. Many elderly individuals, once they retire, choose to live with their children or move to an elderly home, but both alternatives are unappealing to me. The way of life I have adopted allows me to enjoy great comfort. My wife passed away more than 2 years ago, and friends and acquaintances have suggested that I find a new partner, but I do not see it that way. I am someone who values peace. After my wife's passing, I have learned to enjoy my own company. If I were truly asked to find someone, I would feel uncomfortable. At this moment, I enjoy writing, reading, and taking care of my plants. Occasionally, I meet with friends from the neighborhood to chat and have a cup of tea. I couldn't be in a better situation. I currently live alone, although my children are only half an hour away by car. They visit me from time to time. I receive a monthly pension of 6,000 yuan, and since my children have already formed their own families, I have no financial burden or pressure. Because of this, I have managed to save a good amount of money. Because I live alone, my children feel some concern and have suggested that I move in with them. However, I have declined their suggestions. They care a lot about me, and not wanting me to feel isolated, they have also proposed sending me to an elderly home, arguing that there is more company there and someone to take care of me, so I wouldn't have to wash clothes or cook. As soon as I heard the term nursing home, I immediately opposed it. I do not want to go there. I am in good shape, why take me there? I can prepare my own meals and wash my clothes without difficulty. My children have suggested several times that I move in with them, but I have always said no. I recognize their good intentions, but I do not want to be a burden to them. Moreover, going to their house and staying for periods not only causes them inconvenience but also becomes a hassle for me. Noticing my resistance to the idea of living with them, they suggested hiring a caregiver. As soon as I heard that, I shook my head. I do not want a caregiver. It is not right for a young woman and me to live together. My daughter noticed my reaction and began to laugh while I questioned why they were trying to intimidate me. Then she said, "Don't worry, the caregiver we are considering is not a conventional caregiver, it's a form of assistance for the elderly." The term assistance for the elderly piqued my interest, and I became very curious to learn more. My daughter clarified that it involves companies that specialize in providing care services for the elderly, which install cameras in the home linked to the family's mobile phones. This way, if something happens at home, they can also find out. I became increasingly interested as I listened to her. Moreover, she mentioned that someone would come to my house every day to bring me lunch and dinner. If I wanted breakfast, I could also request it. After delivering the meals, they would leave. If I needed anything additional, I could communicate that to them. They would also come every 2 days to wash my clothes. On one occasion, if you need something, just say it. Additionally, if you are not satisfied with the assigned staff, you can notify the company, and they will provide you with someone else. I am waiting for my daughter to continue presenting this to me. She looks at me smiling and says, what do you think, Dad? Does this type of elderly care seem good to you? You don't want to stay at your son's or daughter's house, nor in a nursing home, so we can only consider this option. Upon hearing what my daughter said, I burst out laughing. Okay. After saying this, I realized that there was a matter I hadn't addressed. This new type of care must be expensive, right? I didn't ask my daughter. It's not expensive, it's 2,500 yuan a month. Besides, you won't have to pay anything, my brother and I will take care of that. Don't worry about the money, my daughter said, patting me on the shoulder. Don't worry about the money. How can I feel comfortable with that? There are elderly people at home, and the children are also busy with their studies. It's a time when more money is needed. My monthly pension is 6,000 yuan, so I can cover those 2,500 yuan without any problem. In the end, you all decided that I would take on those 2,500 yuan, and I really like this new type of elderly care. This gives me the opportunity to have more time for myself and makes me feel more at ease. I am sincerely grateful for its effectiveness. It's a great fortune for me. It allows me to enjoy my old age. What great happiness. 3. That I am Aunt Lu, and I am 67 years old. This year I turned 67, and after trying to live with my daughters, I have finally found the type of elderly care that suits me best. When I was younger, I worked as a supervisor in a state-owned garment factory. Now, my monthly pension exceeds 4,200 yuan. I have a son and a daughter. After finishing university, my son decided to stay in Qingdao to grow professionally. He currently has his own house and car and lives comfortably with his wife and child. My daughter lives in a more distant place, but her circumstances are also quite favorable. 2 years ago, she had her second child. At first, after my retirement, I didn't want to be a burden to anyone and longed to enjoy our retired life at home. However, last year, when my husband turned 68, he suffered a severe stroke and passed away suddenly. The loss of my husband was a significant shock for me. For a long time, I couldn't recover. Sometimes, life is extremely fragile, we don't know if tomorrow or an unexpected event will come first. When my husband left, I felt extremely lonely at home. Everywhere around me were memories of him. I couldn't sleep all night, tossing and turning in bed. My children are quite considerate, especially my daughter, who worries about my well-being and called me to invite me to stay with her for a while. My son also contacted me to come to his home. At that moment, I felt somewhat comforted. In our culture, tradition still establishes that we must care for the elderly at home. However, my daughter lives very far away, so I decided that it would be best to spend some time at my son's house. However, I only stayed at my son's house for less than 2 weeks and realized that the situation was not as I had imagined. My son has 2 little ones, a grandson and a granddaughter. I helped care for my grandson until he was over 2 years old, but since my mother was ill, I had no choice but to return to care for her. Thus, my daughter-in-law had to leave her job to take care of the children. When my granddaughter was born, my daughter-in-law initially wanted me to help with the baby, but at that time my husband was not well, so I already had experience caring for my grandson and didn't want to take on that responsibility again. That's why I sought a way to decline the offer. Maybe that's why my daughter-in-law has maintained a somewhat distant attitude towards me over the years. Now that my grandson and granddaughter have grown, I thought things would have changed, but upon arriving at my son's house, I realized that I had underestimated the situation. My daughter-in-law complained that in the past I had not contributed to caring for the children, and now, despite my age, I still had the audacity to go live at my son's house. Although she didn't express it so directly, that was the underlying message. Since I arrived, my daughter-in-law has barely cooked a few times. Preparing meals and washing dishes became my task. Once, while my granddaughter was having dinner, she asked, "Grandma, why do you cook like that?" And my daughter-in-law, without saying a word, took the two children and left. When she went out, she slammed the door hard. My daughter-in-law's attitude made me quite uncomfortable. Every day I spent at my son's house was a source of constant tension. Since I arrived, I could not enjoy my retirement. Instead, I became a caregiver. And despite that, my daughter-in-law never offered me a smile. She always looked at me with disdain. That wasn't the worst part. The most concerning thing was that she also sought conflicts with my son. They argued every few days, and the atmosphere in the house became very tense. The children didn't talk much either. After less than 2 weeks, I decided to pack my bags and asked my son to take me back home. In an instant, I also realized that depending on my son for care in my old age could be complicated. And I can't count on my daughter-in-law for that. Upon returning to my hometown, my daughter called me and asked me to stay there for a while. I firmly refused. With the experience I had in my son's house, I don't dare to have expectations about my daughter. The truth is that I have cared for my son's children for a few days, but my daughter's grandchildren have never been in my charge. They have always been raised by their grandmother. A couple of years ago, my daughter had a second child, and it has been her mother-in-law who has taken care of him. If I go, it would be a disaster. My daughter's apartment has only 2 bedrooms. If I go, I probably wouldn't even have a place to stay. After my experience at my son's house, I truly understood that old saying, the parent's house is always the children's home, but the children's house never becomes the parent's home. Since I returned, I don't have much hope, whether with my son or my daughter, because as expectations grow, so does the possibility of disappointment. Then, some neighbors in the neighborhood suggested to me that, given my age, I shouldn't rely solely on my children, but rather I should look for a partner. Thanks to a friend's recommendation, I met Lao Lu, who is a couple of years older than me and receives a pension of more than 5,000 a month, a little more than mine. My friend mentioned that he had a good character and that his wife had passed away a few years ago, so he wanted to find companionship. Deep down, I was not against starting a new relationship, but I didn't want to settle, so I decided to go out with him to see how it went. Lao Lu lives in the neighboring neighborhood. From time to time, we used to meet to take a walk in the morning market and buy some food. After more than 2 months, we both felt that it was going well. Lao Lu invited me to go to his home and spend some time together, mentioning that this way I could rent out my house and get a rent of more than 1,500 a month. Upon hearing that Lao Lu was considering this for me, I didn't reject the proposal, even though I didn't anticipate that, after less than a month of living together, I would become tired. Before I could rent out my house, I quickly moved again. At that moment, Lao Lu told me that when we moved in together, he would take care of all the expenses, and that we would go shopping and cook together, thus sharing the costs. However, when we actually started living together, I realized that it was not like that. And not just because of the household chores, but also because of the way Lao Lu left everything messy. I couldn't stand it. Once, we went to a mall, and I saw a second-hand ring that cost less than 500 yuan and was gold. At that moment, the store had just opened, and I asked Lao Lu to buy one for me. Since we were starting our relationship, I mentioned that since we were together, it would be a nice memento for him to give me an engagement ring. It wasn't an expensive item, just a few hundred yuan. However, Lao Lu immediately opposed it and commented that we were of a certain age and shouldn't be acquiring such things. He suggested that with that money, it would be wiser to buy some golden pork ribs to cook. Since he didn't buy me the gift, I decided to do it myself. I took out my card and purchased it instantly. Lao Lu mentioned that since we started being together, he would give me his pension every month, but in the first month, he didn't follow through. When I asked for the pension, he simply stated that he had already covered the household expenses and wanted to save the rest for himself. All of this didn't seem so serious to me. I could accept him keeping his money. However, what I couldn't tolerate was his parasitic attitude. At first, we had agreed to divide the household chores, and the first week went well. But over time, the true essence of Lao Lu began to manifest. During the day, he would go off to play cards and come home looking for food, lamenting that nothing had been prepared. I reminded him that we hadn't agreed to share the tasks, and that he should take care of getting the vegetables while I cooked. However, he would just lie on the couch without making any move. When I finished cooking and set the table, he always found something to criticize, whether this was too salty or that didn't taste good. I realized he was a typical macho. When I confronted him, he replied that he took care of my expenses and that I should do some household tasks. I'm not someone who tolerates that. So, that same day, I packed my things and went back to my house. Fortunately, our home had not been rented out, so I have my own home and pension. Why should I tolerate that? I am not anyone's free caretaker, and I don't have to endure his whims. In the end, I returned to my independent life. At first, I thought living alone wasn't so bad, but it didn't take long before I began to feel too isolated, especially at night, when you could hear a pin drop. Upon returning home, every corner seemed filled with memories of my late husband, and I couldn't stand it. On one occasion, during Lao Lin's son's wedding, a friend mentioned to me that, like me, she was single and now lived in a hotel apartment, which was practical and comfortable, and the cost was reasonable. She told me she had been in that place for over 6 months. After the celebration, she took me to her hotel apartment, and I was immediately captivated by the atmosphere of the place. Finally, I discovered a lifestyle that suited my needs. This type of accommodation has gained great popularity in many large cities, and some are specifically designed for older people. Each unit is a studio, with warm and cozy decor. The highlight is that they provide meals, both breakfast and dinner, so there's no need to cook. Plus, there's staff that cleans daily. The cost is comparable to that of a nursing home, but the food is exquisite, and the freedom to come and go is unparalleled. That day, upon returning home, I decided to put my old house up for sale again through an agency. I did some calculations. The rent for the house was 1,500 yuan, and adding my pension of 4,200, I could move to a hotel apartment. Then, I called my children to inform them that I had finally found the lifestyle that best suited me. When they found out I was living in a hotel, they thought it was too expensive. I didn't pay attention to their comments and simply said, "If you think it's expensive, could you help me a little? I don't need much, 1,000 yuan a month from each is enough for me. I don't want to be a burden to you. After working hard my whole life, I want to enjoy my golden years my way." Thus, by combining my savings with my children's, I can live peacefully in the hotel apartment every month. After so many years of effort, it's time to take care of myself in this phase of life. Money is not taken with us when we are born or die, and I don't want to be a prisoner of money. As long as I can eat, drink, and move, any lifestyle that suits me is the best. This hotel for older adults costs more than 3,800 monthly. Although it is somewhat high, I feel comfortable and free, and I consider it a justified expense. However, this type of housing is not suitable for everyone, as they only accept older individuals who can take care of themselves, and there is an age limit. They must be under 75 years old. Some wonder what will happen once they reach that age. Who knows? I'll think about that when the time is right. For now, I am in perfect health and enjoy each day. So here conclude the stories of these 3 older adults. Nowadays, a growing number of elderly people are beginning to realize that nursing homes are becoming less secure. There are various ways to live in old age, such as hiring caregivers, living in nursing homes, or using services from assistance companies. However, none of these alternatives is entirely good or bad. Each has its pros and cons, and what works best for each person is the most important. Well, today we have reached the end of our talk. I appreciate your attention and hope that what I shared resonated with you. To those who are subscribed, don't forget to click the subscription option so you can join me daily. Let's grow together, be happy together, and enjoy aging in harmony. Until our next meeting.